In this video, we're going to talk about the 10 components of an effective MCAT study schedule. For those of you that don't know me, my name is John. I'm a fourth-year medical student. I scored in the 90th percentile of my own MCAT after failing it 3 times. And before I came back to medical school, I ended up working for a couple of the big-name MCAT prep companies before starting this YouTube channel and this business with my sister Maggie. We make these videos because we know what it's like to be in your shoes, and we are looking forward to having you as our colleagues. As I'm studying for Step 2 CK, which is like the medical school equivalent of the MCAT, I made out my plan and I realized that, hey, this is probably a pretty good idea to share with you all how to make an effective study plan. I've made similar videos to this in the past, but this one's going to be a lot more in the nitty-gritty. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that you're going to have to end up doing is picking a date. So for me, that date is July the 5th. Once you've picked that date, you can kind of go ahead and calculate up a lot of things like how many questions you need to be taking a day to get through all your resources and things of that nature, but I'll let you do those calculations on yourself. For me, I picked that date whenever I had approximately 30 days out. And so all of my calculations were according to that. So once you've picked a date, you also need to kind of pick like a score goal that you're aiming for, because that will tailor how well you study and how thoroughly you study. Even though I encourage you all to aim as high as you want, and everybody wants to make a perfect score, you need to pick a score that you're going for. And for me, I want to make a 270, which is probably like MCAT equivalent of like a 520 or something of that nature. Now, once you've picked that date, you're probably wondering about what do you actually do to fill in the time before you test. And there's a lot of different resources, and there's a lot of different options for studying. And honestly, most of them work if you follow them to a T, which is probably not a good idea for me to say since we have like resources that we sell, but most of them are going to work if you just follow them diligently. But that's the very difficult part. However, whatever you're doing, whenever it's getting crunch time, the first thing you need to do is to do a high yield content review. Now, for me, I did that content review through Amboss 200 and UWorld Notes, which we're not even going to talk about the Step 2 stuff. We're going to talk about the MCAT equivalent. But you can use, if you want something free, you can use the Kaplan Quick Sheets. If you want something paid, that's a good bit more extensive. Then you could look at like the IFD High Yield course or our books or things of that nature. That way you can kind of boil everything down into quick digestible fashions and make sure that you understand all the high yield concepts. Now that's not going to be all of your learning. For me with STEP or for you with the MCAT, you're going to fill in some of the lower yield facts through a ton of practice questions, and that's what we'll probably get to here in a second. The next thing that you need to end up doing is pick out like a spaced repetition vehicle. Spaced repetition is the idea of studying a little bit of things you have studied over the course of your MCAT prep every single day. And the best vehicle, in my opinion, is Anki for both STEP and the MCAT. So use Anki. And then you have to ask yourself which deck. I think the OnKing has a great deck. IFD has a deck as well. But OnKing has a great one, Milestone has a great one, and we have plenty of videos on this channel showing you how to set those up and how to use those effectively depending on which resource you want to use. You know, if you want to use something free, then we have like the Khan Academy ones, and if you want something paid, then you either have the IFD options, like the deck that comes with our high yield program, or you have like the deck that's alongside the Kaplan books. But regardless, you pick your modality of studying, and then we probably have a YouTube video that explains how to do it. And the next question you ask yourself is which cards you're going to be using. You probably will be unlocking cards corresponding to the chapter that you're reading or the video that you're watching. Now, the MCAT only has most decks, like a big MCAT deck is like 5,000 or 6,000 flashcards, which seems like a ton. It is a lot, but like the STEP deck is like 30-something thousand. So there's no way I can get through all of those. So I have narrowed down which cards I'm going to focus on by facts, like memorization heavy facts from missed questions and from my high yield review. I'm not a huge fan of putting like full concepts on a flashcard because I just don't think it's quite as helpful. You end up memorizing the words juxtaposed to something like for STEP, it's like vaccine schedules. For the MCAT, it would be like amino acid charges and pKa's and things of that nature. Those are great flashcard material, but it's important for you to decide which cards you're going to make and not really veer from that path. Because if you just start making flashcards for everything, what you'll end up finding out is that whenever you're doing your review, you're not actually putting in enough effort on your review, because you're probably just like, oh, I'll make a flashcard of that and I'll recognize it next time. But you really want to put in the effort to learn the concept and to learn why it functions the way that it does, because thankfully we're studying for a science test essentially, and most things make sense. You just have to think about them long enough. The next component that you just absolutely have to have, it's non-negotiable in your study program, is practice questions. And I actually separate practice questions and practice exams. So for practice questions, UWorld has a great resource. I mean, we have you see that we have a partnership collaboration with them that's associated with our high yield course if you want to make sure that every chapter that you're reading is directly related to a practice question you're going to see. But also there are plenty of good resources out there. The AAMC, which is who writes the MCAT, has like question packs, which I think are excellent resources. Also, there's like plenty of third-party companies that have great resources. Princeton Review has like a book that's pretty helpful, but regardless, you just need to get some reps so that you can learn the low yield concepts after you've reviewed all the high yield concepts, and get some practice applying the high yield concepts. Practice questions are going to be the most important part of your prep, and putting in all the effort you can into taking those questions and reviewing them is what is probably going to be most indicative of your score. Now, you can get a little anal with it and organize how you're going to take your questions like I did, but I think what's most important is that you set a goal for how many questions you're going to take per day and not veer from that. And I'm going to talk about ways to hold yourself accountable later on, but having a good set goal as well as having a good set start time in the morning is really, really important, because it keeps you on track, and you know at the end of the day, if you did all these things, then you can rest easy without worrying about studying late into the night because you feel guilty. The next component of a great MCAT prep program is going to be practice exams, and these are huge. You can see that I am intending to take, 12 practice exams, and I have a lot of students. Whenever I was personally tutoring students, I would have them take anywhere between 10 and 15, just depending on how much they needed to improve. So the best practice exams, AAMC has the best ones. There are 6 of those, and then pretty much any third-party exam is going to be pretty similar. I think Altius has good sciences, but their cars kind of lack. And the cool thing about a lot of these third-party prep companies is that they offer like one free exam. So, I mean, it's not a bad idea to take, all 6 of the AAMCs and then go to like Kaplan, Blueprint, Altius, and take their free exam. So you can see my order that I'm going to take my exams in. And then now that we're kind of through like the basic stuff for what you need, which is pretty much like the 4 pillars are going to be high yield content review, spaced repetition, practice questions, and practice exams. You need to work in some strategy there, but that's where things like this YouTube channel come in, as well as just being mindful when you're reviewing your questions if you could have gotten the answer through a different route. So things like the flowchart method that we teach on this channel, where we talk to you about passage mapping and how to figure out questions and like what hints and clues that they're giving you, and how to pick up on these little nuances that the AAMC authors have, are really important. They're really impactful. But now we'll kind of cover some of the things that you don't characteristically think about when you're thinking about like a study schedule. And the first one is going to be an accountability partner. Now, I think it's best if this person is somebody that's studying for the same exam as you and they're testing similarly. And we have a Discord channel, and there are people all the time that are trying to find study buddies in that Discord channel to hold each other accountable. Now, if you're going to pick a study buddy or an accountability partner, it's really okay if they're your friends. The person I'm studying with is one of my great friends, but you need to make sure that person is a dog. You need to make sure that that person is a hard worker, and that they're going to show up when they say they're going to show up, and that y'all are going to study together and not just kind of get caught up, wind jamming with each other. That's a really Southern thing to say, but it means talking. So I've got an accountability partner, and I've really enjoyed the way that we've been studying. We do take breaks and we do talk and things of that nature. That's normal. But what I've really enjoyed is we take practice exams together, and I would probably recommend this. But take and review practice exams together so that you make sure that you get through it in the allotted time. So if you know, hey, we're both testing today and we're both going to review everything tomorrow, or for STEP, what my buddy and I have been doing is we've been taking the exam and reviewing it in the same day, but the practice exams for STEP are a little bit shorter than they are for the MCAT. which makes it a little bit more feasible. But what we've been doing is we've been passing questions back and forth. So he takes number 1, I take number 2, and we kind of quickly read through the question, talk to each other about our thought process. While we're doing that, the other one's reading the explanation and making sure that that person is explaining the science correctly, and then we give like our own 2 cents, and then we'll also kind of chime in about tangentially related topics and little things that we've seen tested on UWorld or another question bank, and it's really been helpful. I've noticed that those days are the most helpful of my studying so far. For some reason, just teaching the material helps you retain it a good bit better, and also having it taught to you, you think to yourself like, oh, that's what Jessica was saying whenever they were teaching me about Le Chatelier's principle, things of that nature. So I've really enjoyed an accountability partner and a study buddy. There is a bad way to use one, and there's a good way to use one, and I think what I've just described to you is a very helpful way to use a study buddy. Now these last components, whenever I would meet with students, I would always build these into a study schedule, because life doesn't stop just because you want to study for the MCAT. You still have responsibilities. Some of you are parents, some of you are working a job, things of that nature. So you still have your responsibilities. And so, it's important to list out things that you care about, things that you have to do. So, you may have your professional life, and for me right now, that's like doing research and statistics and writing papers and going to all these meetings and things like that. But for you, it may be research. It may be, maybe you're like a TA, or maybe you work, or maybe you have something else. I don't know. Who knows what you're doing? Maybe you're starting a YouTube channel. I have no clue. But you have these professional responsibilities that you have to groom, and you can't just let them slip. You also have like your application and things of that nature, which I should be working on mine as well for residency, which is just crazy to think about. But you have these are professional responsibilities, and you can't just let them slide. So schedule them in. Every 3 days I spend an hour working on my application or things of that nature. I don't. I should be, but I don't. And then it's really important for you to schedule like your personal life too. And this is where it's important to me for you to have kind of like a sober conversation with yourself about what are the non-negotiables in my life for this next month or 2, and what are the things that I can set aside, and what are the things that I can completely reduce. And so for me, the non-negotiables are faith and family. For you, that may be like, I don't know, like volunteering or something like that. But it's really important that you figure out what is absolutely non-negotiable. And those are things that if you lose it, then none of this matters, okay? And then kind of set up what is sometimes negotiable. For me, that's like lifting, because 3rd year of medical school was really difficult for me. It may not have been for everybody, it was tough for me. And I kind of got skinny fat all over again. So I want to see if I can fix some of that this summer. And then sadly, friends to me are a sometimes negotiable. I want to be a great friend as much as I can, but I also know that I have a responsibility to myself and my partner and my future patients to give it all that I can for this next little bit. And then I just realized how sad this sounds fun. There's a season for everything, and not to get biblical on you and quote scripture, but there's a time for everything, and sometimes it's a time for you to have fun and party if that's your thing, and go play basketball 3 times a week. And sometimes it's just a season for you to wake up at 4 every day and work as hard as you can and get home late and make a YouTube video because you owe it to your audience because they've been so great to you. Sometimes it's a season for you to move off to Minnesota for a 6-year residency or something of that. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you don't like having fun. It's just there's seasons for everything, and there's trade-offs that you have to make in life. And unfortunately with medicine, this is a very, very trade-off heavy field. I joke with a lot of people that it kind of feels like the military because they tell you where you're going to go, and then they tell you that how hard you're going to work. There's laws that say you can't work more than 80 hours in residency, and not everybody follows those laws, and there's a season for everything. And maybe when you're studying for the MCAT, it's not the season that you hop on with the boys and play Xbox for 4 hours every night. But once you're done with the MCAT, you can do that. Heck, you can do it for 8 hours because guess what? You're in medical school now. It doesn't really matter what you do for the next 9 months, and as long as you don't get like a DUI or something. So there's a season for everything. And a bonus, number 11, I just realized that I left out, is you need things that you can do to avoid zero. Now this is something that my study partner and I say all the time, is regardless of the day, we've got to avoid zero progress. So I'm not like taking a formal off day now, but my weekend days are so unproductive, they probably count as half a day each. But I always avoid zero. And what that means is you need to find things that are making progress that have low barriers for you to actually pull off. And for me, that's like, I listen to something called Divine Intervention. It's a podcast where a guy named Divine, he kind of does something similar to what I do for the MCAT. He's great at it. He teaches high yield concepts, and so listening to Divine Intervention is a really good way for me to make progress whenever I really, maybe it's 5 o'clock and I've been at it for 12 hours and I'm just really burnt out, but I know I need to do a little bit more work. I just listen to a podcast because it's not quite as labor intensive, but I'm still making progress. And so for you all, I think IFD videos are great for that. We've got a ton of resources on YouTube. Just watching us work through passages, you'll pick up something. And lastly, just a quick point about motivation. Use whatever you can for motivation. And honestly, if you want the goal bad enough, you really shouldn't struggle with motivation. I understand that some days are more difficult than others, but if you really want to be a doctor and you can't make yourself study, then you either have a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to be a doctor or what it takes to be a doctor, or maybe you're just like not mature enough for this yet, or maybe you just need a wake-up call. And I'm here to be that wake-up call if that's what you need. This is a hard career, and you're gonna end up going $250,000 in debt, working 60 plus hours a week as a medical student. You're always going to have to be on, and you're going to be anxious, and you're going to be floundering constantly. And your reward for that is going to a residency where 80 hours per week is considered normal. 60 hours per week, which is 150% of what a normal person works, is considered an easy residency. You're going to make like $12 an hour during that time period. If something like hard work and monotonous tasks and doing things you don't really want to do preclude you from making progress, then you really need to have a come to Jesus meeting with yourself and just kind of tell yourself, like, this is a time that I lock in. And if you don't see your poor score on a UWorld block and think to yourself, like, all right, this is an opportunity for me to improve, tomorrow I'm going to come back and be better, then there's no amount of like Rocky Balboa videos that you can watch to get you motivated. So I wish that there was a magic like motivation pill I could tell you. And I had this private conversation with a student the other day that asked me how I stayed motivated through all of it. I unfortunately had a lot of negative emotions motivating me through my MCAT studies. It's very different for STEP, but for the MCAT, I was embarrassed that I had failed it a couple of times. I had told all these people I was trying to go to medical school, and now they see me around my hometown and they're like, what are you doing? I thought you were trying to be a doctor. Why are you back here? And so I was very embarrassed. So I used that as motivation, and I was a little angry at myself for not working harder the last time. So I used that as motivation. And I was very scared of what it meant if I didn't get the score. And so I use that for motivation as well. There's obviously positive ways to have motivation, but and maybe this is a poor advice, and I apologize if it is, but I'm really just kind of relaying my experience. Use whatever you have for motivation, and even when you're not motivated, it's very important for you to be disciplined. That's why I talked to you earlier about having a set time that you should start, a set number of questions that you should finish each day, and don't ever break that even once, because that sets in your mind that it's okay for you to break that schedule. So if you show up and you do the work every single day, you will improve, you will get there, and you can do this. This career is, I promise you, there are people in medical school that are not as smart as you, and I'm probably one of them. Okay, but it's all about if you have the tenacity. That's all this is. If you can wake up every day, you can do the work, then you can be a doctor. And we are obviously here to support you in any way that we can. I remember what it's like to sit in your shoes. I'm sorry you're having to study for the test. I really am. If it makes you feel any better, I'm suffering with you right now, studying for a standardized exam. We have plenty of free videos that we have that can help you along this course. We've written books that try to speed up your studies so that you don't have to stay motivated or disciplined as long. We have courses that do that even better. We're walking you through lectures. It's associated with UWorld and all these different things. So we're doing our absolute best to give you resources to make this easier, to make this more accessible for people like myself that you know that they're going to be a great doctor because they have the heart for it, but they just couldn't get past this test. And that breaks my heart because it did break my heart. But wherever you are in your study schedule, we're here to help you. Drop a comment, let me know what you need to be successful, and I will do my best to create that resource for you. Links for the courses and all the stuff that I talked about, as well as probably some of the YouTube videos, are going to be in the description. If you need some guidance about where to go to navigate this, because I understand the more videos we make, the more convoluted it's getting. But regardless, I really appreciate you watching this video. I appreciate you studying with us, and know that we are always rooting for you. I can't wait to call you a colleague. I know you can get there. Thanks for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.